Okay, I'm assuming by now that you guys have probably seen the interview between Ricky Starks and Chris Van Vliet. And I know this is impeccable timing, but this was trending all over social media. Ricky Starks basically dove into the situation with Adam Copeland, why he isn't being booked, situations where he visited WWE to support Cody, and people in AEW not being thrilled about it. So obviously the timing of this is very interesting. But now, hours later, it gets revealed that Ricky Starks has been removed from GCW. This was the tweet to confirm the news. Game Changer Wrestling came out and said, "Hey, we have just been informed that Ricky Starks has been pulled from all upcoming GCW appearances, including his announced match on 12/14 in Los Angeles, his unannounced match on 12/28 in Seattle, and his unannounced match on 1/19 at the Hammerstein Ballroom." So obviously, everybody was wondering what the hell is going on. And man, this is where it gets really interesting, and quite frankly, it gets kind of annoying because I do think it's a coincidence of timing. But basically, Fightful comes out and reports that they were told AEW was not thrilled with the comments that were made by Effie about Tony Khan and AEW in a podcast. Now, I actually made a video on that about a week ago, which was titled AEW versus GCW Drama. Is AEW trying to kill the indies? And this is where things get really interesting because I do think the timing of this is coincidental. But let's just be very clear here. The optics are incredibly bad because, as you guys know, other AEW stars do work GCW. And as of this time, this is the only one that's been announced. So obviously, Tony Khan seems to be pretty damn petty. Now, let's address Effie's comments. Yes. Do I think they were necessarily smart comments considering that GCW and AEW work together in some fashion? Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily right to quote unquote bash your partner, if that's what you want to call it. But at the same time too, what Effie was saying really wasn't even that bad, like in the grand scheme of things. Also, Effie is not Brett Lauderdale. Effie is not the owner of GCW. He's simply just talent. And I understand why some people would be upset about this. I understand why some people feel this is valid. But at the same time, too, I think it is kind of weird. That podcast has been floating around for what, over a week now? And we have seen other AEW talent show up in GCW. And so now today, we have this whole interview with Ricky Starks and Chris Van Vliet, and of course everybody has immediately come out and to his defense, hashtag free Ricky Starks. There is a lot of people who are upset and bothered by this news, and I get it. Quite frankly, I get it. The thing about Ricky Starks, and I put out this tweet and I said this, I'm like, man, either AEW is working on like a really amazing work, or Tony Khan is just simply losing grip with AEW. And honestly, guys, I believe he's losing grip on AEW. I think Tony Khan for a long time spoke in absolutes. And especially, you know, this isn't like an anti-AEW video. This is just the reality. And I've said this for years, literally since like 2019, literally when AEW was starting out. Be very careful speaking in absolutes. Be very careful saying that you're not going to do something or you are going to do something, because at the end of the day, your word is your greatest currency. And when you say something, especially to such a large audience, you are creating expectations for your audience. And this is where I get really bothered with Tony Khan specifically because of the way that he used Twitter and the way that he's been in interviews and stuff like that. I don't know why Tony Khan always appeared to be the anti-Vince McMahon, like the opposite of Vince McMahon, you know, when it comes to not releasing talent. We all saw what happened with Anthony Henry. Tony Khan said he wasn't going to be that kind of guy. He released Anthony Henry when he was injured and then told everybody at the media scrum that he'll bring him back when he's cleared and healthy to go. That was just such a weird move, right? Tony Khan talked, I think even this company in general started off with this impression that they were all for workers' rights. You know, people don't talk about it as much, but if you go back to the original press conference when they were launching, I mean, you would think that AEW would have had a union for their wrestlers. You would have thought so many different things, but we have seen them add options You know, they've opted in for talent contracts for talent they're not using. Ricky Starks was one of them. Penta, right? Penta, Ray Phoenix. Like, we're looking at their situation, and Phoenix has over a year added roughly to his contract. That's what was reported, and they're not being used, right? And this is not the first time this has happened. Like, we hear stories of AEW adding more time to contracts or not releasing talent who want to be out of the company. But at the end of the day, what made AEW so attractive in the beginning was the fact that, like, Vince McMahon did those things. Vince McMahon, you know, like, look at Luke Harper as an example, or Mustafa Ali. Like, there was talent that wanted out of the company, and WWE wasn't going to do it. WWE weren't going to allow that to happen. And I've always said as well, guys, you got to be very careful with this, because from a business perspective, I understand it, right? Like, I get it from the business standpoint, but from like a relationship standpoint and morale, it doesn't make sense. And I was actually really bothered to see that Tony Khan has kind of done some of those things that we were all against WWE doing. And again, I understand why Tony Khan does it from a business perspective, and I'm not the one with millions and millions of dollars on the line here, so I do understand that perspective. But you were supposed to be the opposite of that. And I think it's very unattractive if you're a new talent coming into AEW. If you see this kind of stuff happening, I just don't think it's attractive whatsoever. And I think as a talent, I would be pretty bothered by it. Now, I can't speak for the talent elsewhere. I just know from my own personal opinion, which is the point of my videos, to share different perspectives. I just think it's slightly odd that AEW has that approach. Now, none of their other stars have been announced to be removed from GCW. And also, GCW has a very hardcore audience as well. So social media is probably going to get really chaotic with both sides. And I understand, like, you know, at the end of the day, we thought AEW was trying to help the indie scene. We thought AEW was trying to be a juggernaut that was like overall for the health of pro wrestling. But guys, he's a billionaire. Tony Khan's a billionaire. And at the end of the day, he's going to care more about his business than the industry as a whole. And I think that's one of the big messages that people need to understand. Even as much as WWE could do good sometimes with things like this, they're still a business, and they're always going to put their business first before they care about the industry health. And I guess it's just, you know, Tony Khan is the one who talked a big game out of it. AEW in general talked a big game out of it. And now we are looking at them. And again, it's why I say don't speak in absolutes, because you never know what's going to happen. It's just really unfortunate, to be honest. It's really, really unfortunate. And it sucks to see that this is the case. But is Tony Khan being petty? Yeah, I think he is. And I think Tony Khan has a list of talent who probably don't want to be there. And if they don't want to be there, don't just sit them on the sidelines, man. Because honestly, this whole Ricky Starks situation, if he does end up leaving AEW, the minute he shows up in WWE, if that is what were to happen, I mean, you're already making it a bigger deal. You know, I think it just would be better if they let it go amicably, or, hey, have them put over people. Have your talent put over people on the way out. At least at the very minimum, you could do that. What do you guys think? Let me know down below.